Hello everyone, this is Kezia Norik, but this time instead of a song I'm going to tell sort of a story. So if you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I've shared a few songs about my battle with depression, and I do have more songs. So I kind of wanted to give a little background on how my depression started. So for a long time, I didn't actually know it was depression until it got to sort of its worst point, and then I was like, oh yeah, that's probably what this is. But I felt guilty too, because I thought that my life was too good for me to feel that way. I had no right to be so upset when I wasn't abused, and my family loved me, and I had a stable home with 2 parents. And I felt like I was not entitled to my feelings, which just added to the vicious cycle. But when I look back, it's taken a long time and a lot of reflection to see that it actually started in childhood after a trauma, which couldn't be avoided, and it was nobody's fault. So I'm gonna get into that. When I was 7, we got into a car accident. The 3 youngest of us kids, a sister just older and younger than me, and my mother and I was sitting in the middle of the back seat. We always fought for the middle seat because I don't know why, we just thought it was better somehow. But the year of car we had didn't have a shoulder strap in the middle seat, so when we impacted, I flung forward into the center console between the 2 front seats. But in my memory, I blinked and didn't actually hit it. Turns out I actually blacked out and I broke my nose. But I didn't realize that until we went to the hospital. It was cold and it was scary, and I had to take my shirt off in the hallway, and they didn't close the curtain, and it was very stressful, and I had thrown up blood all over my shirt, and I had to go get a urine sample, and the nurse came in with me, which I was not happy with, but I dealt with it. And then she was trying to get us to leave, and I was like, no, I just used the bathroom, I need to wash my hands. And she was hesitant to let me, which I didn't. At the time, I was just like, lady, you're a medical professional. You need to let me wash my hands. I mean, you should understand about germs, you of all people. Well, she did end up letting me, and I remember looking down at the sink while I rinsed my hands and got soap, and then as I was doing the final rinse, I looked up into the mirror, and that moment is frozen in my memory because it was the first time I realized that my nose, that there was even anything wrong other than like the blood vomit. I thought I was a monster. My nose was sideways, my lip was swollen to several times its original size, and it was a shock because I had no idea. And it didn't really fully affect me until later. I was just sort of dealing with it. The next morning, my sister was like trying to make light of it to cheer me up, and so she was like, it's funny, it's a fat lip, and it's nothing to be sad about. And I didn't feel any pain at that point because my body was just like protecting me from the pain. So the next morning we were laughing about it, but after that I remember not laughing and not smiling at all because I felt like a monster, and I was ashamed and afraid to let anybody else see me. I refused to go to church. because I was sure the kids there would make fun of me. And I was homeschooled at that point, so I didn't have to worry about that, but I avoided reflective surfaces because I was legitimately afraid to see myself. And that was really hard. And that's when it started. I started getting separation anxiety when my mother would leave. I remember standing by the door and crying, waiting for her to come home, which my sister did have some of that too. And for me, it was coupled with feeling hideous and monstrous and afraid to be seen, and I started pulling away. I think I didn't smile at all since the first day until we went to the dentist, and we all had an appointment set up ahead of time, but my mother didn't want me going in because she was afraid they would bump my nose and seriously hurt me. So I just sat in the waiting room for hours as everybody else had their appointments, wishing I could be anywhere else, anywhere that wasn't full of people, strangers just looking at me. But then this little boy came in. He had to have been really young, but he was walking and he was smiling and greeting just everybody. Just the happiest little guy you could imagine. And when he came right up to me, he didn't even react. He just smiled and greeted me exactly the same as he did everybody else. And that was the first time I smiled. After absorbing everything that had happened, that was the first time I was ready to smile. After that, I did go to the hospital and got my bones realigned so that at least it wasn't very obviously crooked, and the swelling of my lip did go down. But I still, that was the start. That was the seed planted for my depression in later years.